This is Tuesday, April 7th. The province is still waiting for hundreds of test results for COVID-19. The Premier says he's frustrated.
I am concerned, and yes, I do think it's taking too long.
Also tonight, more on the spring fishery and waiting on the federal government to make a final call on whether it will go ahead. Good evening. Thank you for joining us on Compass. PEI is still waiting for hundreds of test results done for COVID-19. There was no update today from the Chief Public Health Officer on any new cases. And the Premier says he's finding the waiting difficult. Our Nicole Williams is with us live again tonight in studio. So Nicole, give us a picture of the situation surrounding testing tonight.
Well, Louise, as you say, the Premier says he's finding the situation frustrating. We didn't hear from Dr. Heather Morrison today because we're still waiting for results from the national lab in Winnipeg. As of right now, the government website says a total of 1,482 tests have been conducted and that we're waiting for 464 results to come back. That means we're still waiting for about 31% of all tests. So that's where the frustration is coming from. Premier King says the province has been pushing for a quicker turnaround time, that he knows the national lab is under a lot of pressure. PEI is one of the few provinces that relies almost exclusively on the national lab, but the wait time for these results is a concern.
We feel that this might be luring Islanders into a false sense of belief that we have flattened the curve, so to speak, and we haven't. We are increasing our testing, and we fully anticipate that through that increased testing we will have more positive cases. And it is frustrating, absolutely, that we have put every type of pressure that we can to get return more quickly, and we feel that has been answered, but here we are today and we don't have any tests back. So we'll continue to push it, but yes, it is a concern for Dr. Morrison and for me.
And at that afternoon briefing, the only one today, we also heard about the province's concern over tourism and the upcoming fishing season.
Yeah, Louise, well, with the commercial fishing season just around the corner, there have been lots of questions about whether or not it will actually go ahead. Today, the province told us that it's moving forward with anticipation that it is going ahead, but the decision is ultimately not up to the province, but up to the federal government. Take a listen.
There are important decisions before us, and we must consider what the opening of the spring lobster, snow crab, and oyster fisheries will look like. We will continue to call on our federal government to give us indication of what the future holds so that our industry can be prepared. This has to be done sooner rather than later.
So right now, Fox says his department is developing supports and programs for people in the fishery sector. And if it's all to go ahead, there needs to be protocols to keep people safe while working in plants and on boats, and how they would do physical distancing properly in small spaces on boats. At this point, the Premier said government isn't going to speculate what sort of financial support would have to be in place, though, if the spring season is canceled.
Yeah, a lot of people wondering about that for sure. And Nicole, we also got an update on early child care services for essential workers. How's that going?
Well, we're told that so far, almost 600 families have applied for daycare services and 11 emergency child care centers have opened, with 13 more ready to go. Now, any centers that do open have to increase their cleaning, staggered drop-offs, and outdoor playtimes. We're also told that more inspectors have been hired to make sure children and staff are kept safe. This is on top of guidelines already laid out by the Chief Public Health Office. No more than 20 people, including kids, parents, and staff, are allowed at a center. No more than 5 people in a room, and everyone needs to practice physical distancing.
All right, that was a big update. Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate that. That's Nicole Williams reporting live for us in studio tonight. The Premier said today that about 9,000 people have been laid off because of the pandemic. Some of them are trying to file for EI, and some are getting frustrated by that process. People are spending hours on the phone but are still not able to talk to anybody. Egmont MP Bobby Morrissey says his office is fielding dozens of calls every day.
When you no longer have income and you're depending on your employment insurance payment to pay your bills, then it's a very stressful situation for these people. And the inability to speak to anybody, because in the past, before we were experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic, you could go to your local Service Canada office and have a lot of these issues corrected.
Morrissey says he'd like to see local agents for Service Canada handling local calls. He says that would take the pressure off the National Call Centre. CBC News contacted Service Canada last week to ask about the wait times, and we have not yet received a response. A program to help Islanders pay for home heating oil has been expanded. It's administered by the Salvation Army. Now people can get help a second time, and there is no income threshold to qualify. People can receive $400 for oil or propane or for their electric bill. Information about how to apply is on the Salvation Army Charlottetown Facebook page. Today was supposed to be the start of a new sitting of the PEI legislature. That is now on hold indefinitely. In the meantime, the leaders of the Green Party and the Liberals are part of new cabinet groups dealing with the pandemic. The Premier's office says it's focused on COVID-19 at the moment, and in an email to CBC provided no timetable to recall the legislature. For many Islanders, watching the COVID-19 briefings has become a daily ritual. But for those Islanders who are deaf or have hearing loss, getting that information can be difficult. Travis Kingdon has that story.
The government does offer captioning on its live briefings that air on its YouTube and Facebook account for those Islanders who may be hard of hearing. The viewers just need to turn that feature on themselves. But the PEI Council for Disability says for those Islanders who are deaf, a sign language interpreter is a much better option. If you watch COVID-19 updates by governments in other parts of the country, you're likely to notice this, a sign language interpreter on the screen. But that's something you haven't seen here on the island, and the council says that's preventing some Islanders from getting important information.
If you are born deaf, often some folks never learn to read because the interconnection between sound and language is fundamental. So they never really understand, the sound of a letter.
The Wavefront Center for Communication Accessibility advocates for people who are deaf and hard of hearing nationally. It says without an interpreter, many who are deaf aren't able to access information on COVID-19 in their first language. Now, Carol says she knows the government is working to get the message out to all Islanders, but says not providing this service can be a barrier to some.
This is another form of social isolation. And in times that are very scary, everything's changing so quickly, they have the right to have the information in real time like everybody else.
Now, Carol says there are licensed sign language interpreters here on the island, but says they don't even need to be in the same room. In fact, they can be anywhere in the world and do the translation. And Carol says she hopes the government will consider adding a translator to their briefings in the future. Travis Kingdon, CBC News, Charlottetown.
If you're thinking of burning some of your yard waste this week, you cannot. There will be no permits issued because the government department's offices are closed to the public. Burning permits are required to burn grasses, leaves, and branches outdoors until the end of November. Burning any other type of waste at any time is illegal. COVID-19 has an impact on just about everywhere, including on the courts. The legal system has been experimenting with some new ways of handling proceedings. Olivia Stevanovich has more.
This isn't usually where you'll find a Chief Justice, working at home instead of presiding from the bench.
I think this is going to be a real learning experience.
But it's one this top judge is embracing.
Hopefully that the learning experience will produce longer-term benefits in the ability to use technology in the courts.
From the Supreme Court of Canada down, the justice system is modernizing in ways it never has before, replacing paperwork with electronic filings, in-person proceedings with phone and video conferencing, all to adapt to the realities of physical distancing. This criminal defense lawyer says it hasn't been easy.
And we're all flying by the seat of our pants, trying to make the best of a bad situation. And I think we're actually doing a pretty good job.
Most courthouses are only hearing urgent and emergency matters, postponing other cases by weeks and months. This lawyer says the courts were already playing catch-up long before the virus began to spread. And now he worries the pandemic could create an unworkable quagmire.
There aren't enough defense counsel or crowns to deal with that flow and the doubling up of scheduling of trial dates.
He says if the courts don't take steps to address the looming crunch now, the ramifications could be a backlog that will last for months or years to come, and charges could be thrown out. Olivia Stevanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
We know many of you are very worried right now about your finances, about paying your bills, your mortgage, putting food on your table. This week, many of you will apply for the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, but will it be enough? Paul Traynor is my guest via Skype tonight from his office in Charlottetown. Good to see you, Paul. And I know you wear many hats: financial, insurance advisor, mortgage broker, and the president of the PEI Business Federation. So I'd love to begin with what kind of questions you have been fielding.
Well, we've been certainly feeling our fair share of them, mostly financial. Most people want to know how to defer their mortgage payments, how to defer their leasing payments, or how to defer their bills of some sort. And then, of course, how to apply for these different programs as well, too, and how to make sure that their employees are looked after as far as applying for EI benefits and those type of things.
Now, people have started applying for federal benefits. Do you think, and there's lots of provincial initiatives out there as well to sort of fill that gap, do you think all this will be enough?
It depends. It's not going to be for some people. Obviously, the higher the debt loads, the more stress people are going to have, the less the debt loads, people will be fine. So it depends on the industries as well too, the tourism sector or the restaurant sector or the retailers that are completely shut out. So small business owners, of course, are extremely negatively impacted as well. So again, it just depends on the sector, but it should be enough, and hopefully it will be enough. And hopefully this will be very short-lived. The longer it lasts, obviously, the harder it's going to be for people going forward.
So I'll ask you to put on your financial advisor hat for a moment, because you and I have spoken before about debt levels and consumer debt and just average people who, you know, are living paycheck to paycheck. And I know the advice has often been to have that 3-month buffer. What about those people who don't have that right now?
Well, I mean, the banks have been good as far as deferring mortgage payments. And at the end of the day, you have to feed your family. Those are, those are the important things. And the banks will defer mortgage payments for up to 6 months. Some of the leasing and the rentals people will defer rents for, 2 or 3 months. And that will help an awful lot. And the bottom line is that if people reduce their debt, or live, instead of having the pizzas, maybe they can cook a little bit more home, just to keep those debt levels as low as humanly possible, because we don't know how long it's going to last, and of course, the longer it lasts, the harder it's going to be. So we would have to say, be resilient and keep your debt levels low.
How helpful has it been for the Bank of Canada to reduce interest rates?
It helped for sure. Interest levels have dropped down. People have wanted to refinance or redoing their mortgages. They're certainly, it's been a positive for them. But again, those are the people that probably had, weren't in a dire situation anyway. So it was very positive for them, and some people are taking advantage of that.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on the impact to the housing market on PEI.
Well, the housing market was going a little bit crazy. I think we alluded to this before, that the Airbnb business and those type of things are probably not going to happen as strongly as they were before. So it's going to open a lot of those apartment rentals, or those rentals that normally were not on the marketplace are going to be on the marketplace. Hopefully drop down some of these rental costs. We're seeing rents at $1,000, $1,100, $1,200, $1,300 a month, and that's insane. And people can't do that. So I'm hopeful that when we come out of this, it'll actually be a good thing, and maybe they might put some restrictions on some of these Airbnb things that, quite frankly, should be put over to the rental act, or the rental market, if you will.
Paul Traynor, I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, it's always good to having me, and I appreciate you having me for sure, Louise. Thank you.
Well, a special weather statement is in effect for all 3 counties, not to do with tomorrow or Thursday's forecast, but really as we get into Thursday night into Friday morning, some strong winds, even some accumulating wet snow. I will have all of the details, plus we'll talk about Good Friday and how Easter weekend is shaping up. Coming up a little later, your full forecast is on Compass.
Well, it certainly has felt like spring, hasn't it? And one island company is rushing to keep up with demand. Vesey's Seeds says orders are coming in from all over Canada, many of them from first-time customers. Brian Higgins reports.
It's quiet on the outside. Inside, Vesey's is busy like never before. The company says over the past 2 weeks, it's seen a 5-fold increase in orders with no end in sight.
They've added a second shift inside the facility at York with about 100 staff at work. They're also getting questions over the phone from first-time buyers on how to grow a vegetable garden. Vesey's is deemed an essential service as part of Canada's food supply chain.
There are certainly people who are undoubtedly concerned about where the food supply will be come harvest time, late summer 2020. You know, there's a certain amount of panic, I think, involved. There doesn't seem to be any end in sight with regards to the massive amount of demand.
Vesey says other areas of its business are way down. Shiploads of perishable spring bulbs are now arriving from Europe with no buyers in sight. But for now, Vesey's is focusing on filling those seed orders to help Canadians nervous about this pandemic try to grow their own food. Brian Higgins, CBC News, York.
As we go to break, a live look outside in Charlottetown on a beautiful Tuesday night. Jay's full forecast is coming up after this break.
Wednesday on Island Morning, they work all winter to prepare their steers for the Easter beef show and sale. Now, it's been canceled. But there's a silver lining for a couple of beef producers. We'll explain on the next Island Morning.
Well, Jay Scotland now with a full forecast. And you know, Jay, the sun was back to brighten up the day again. It was beautiful, but that's about to change, I understand.
Yeah, special weather statement is in effect for all 3 counties, but it's clear enough tonight. Still a lot of blue sky in behind me that it's a near full moon tonight, near full moon tomorrow. The moon's at perigee tonight, which means its closest point to Earth in its orbit around the planet. And that means that this evening at around 7:20, just after 7:20, you're going to see an absolutely huge moon rising on the horizon. And tomorrow at around 8:40, it should be fairly clear as well. It'll be even nearer to full and still very close to Earth. So 2 nice nights of a nice view of the moon you can enjoy from your back deck or your front porch. So be sure to check that out tonight. Here's a look at the special weather statement that is in effect across all 3 counties. Now, this is for Thursday night, some wet snow moving in. For central and eastern areas, by Friday morning should switch over to rain, but you could see some heavier snowfall up west as that transition could take longer. So central eastern PEI, upwards of 5 or so centimeters of wet snow into Friday morning. Up west, locally up to 15, according to this special weather statement, along with strong southerly winds gusting from 70 to 90 kilometers per hour. Going to keep you updated if those numbers change, though, as we get closer to Thursday night and into Good Friday, when we're going to see that messy weather moving in. Temperatures between 0 and 3 this hour across the island. Quiet conditions on the satellite and radar imagery. And that will be, well, maybe not quite as quiet tomorrow, but nothing too heavy in the forecast. A few flakes in the forecast also for your Wednesday. Clouds will increase tonight into tomorrow morning. A few passing flurries by noon. They should be done up west. Mid to late afternoon clearing out for central and eastern areas. Then back to a clear sky tomorrow night. Into Thursday morning, we start out sunny. It's as we get late in the day on Thursday, there's the approaching storm system. Late evening, overnight into Friday, some wet snow starts to fall. Transitions over to rain for central and eastern areas through the day, and you'll eventually see that transition up west as well, looking at this track, but you could get a bit more wet snow before it switches over to rain. Stay tuned for details as we get closer to your Thursday and Friday. Temperatures tonight between -2 and -3 with the clouds increasing through the overnight hours tonight. We'll see cooler than normal temperatures again tomorrow, but a nice mix of sun and cloud to a mostly sunny sky in the afternoon over western PEI. Temperatures between 0 and +2. Central and eastern areas, similar story between -1 and -3 tonight. Clouds will be increasing. Flurries tomorrow morning should clear out mid through late afternoon for central and eastern areas. Then we'll get back to some pretty sunny conditions to round out the day. Highs between 0 and 3 degrees tomorrow. Flurries will not amount to too much, and the winds won't be overly gusty, becoming northerly 10 to 20 k into the afternoon. They're pretty light at the moment. Mix of sun and cloud on Thursday with that snow arriving Thursday night, and Good Friday, well, at least in terms of the weather, not looking that good at the moment. Wet snow changing to rain and strong southerly winds. Just flurries in the forecast for Saturday. Easter Sunday, though, shaping up to be a nice one at this point. Louise?
All right, thanks, Jay. Good to see you. We'll see you again tomorrow at 6 o'clock. And as we take a break, our photo of the day segment, it's back. Here is one from Fraser Smith. Fraser has sent us photos before of his backyard rabbit. He's named Dusty. Dusty is making an appearance just in time for Easter. Hi, Dusty. Good to see you. We'd love to put your photos on Compass. Send them to us by email or on social media. And there is more Compass to come after this break. Well, feast your eyes on this. The lobster trap tree in Tignish is being lit up for Easter this year to cheer up residents during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Christmas display was first put up 2 years ago to honor fishermen who died. The recreation director for the town of Tignish says the lobster trap tree usually has an angel on top, but right now it has a cross. It's also lit to thank essential workers in Western PEI. And a cafe near the Confederation Bridge is saying thanks as well, serving up free lunches to truckers. Crossings Cafe is normally closed this time of year, but the owners say they wanted to do something special for truckers, so they put a call out for supplies. And since yesterday, they've been handing out boxed lunches, complete with a sausage on a bun, cookies, fruit, and a drink.
Truckers are very thankful for a meal. We had a guy come in yesterday, said, I haven't eaten all day. Thanks so much for this. Their eyes got so big, they couldn't say thank you enough. Others were just really grateful. A few of them already had meals, and so they said, give it to the next guy. And so 99% of the truckers are very, very grateful. We want to make sure, we kind of wanted to say, hey, let's send some good news out there that people can hear and get aboard. And we've had a lot of good comments on Facebook. We were kind of concerned about people, they didn't know who we were and what we were doing, but it's just been a real good feedback, and so we're thankful for that. It's not about us, it's about our community. We love Borden, and we love where we live, and we love PEI as well. It's a great place to live.
So far, staff say they've handed out over 200 free lunches. They do it all while wearing homemade masks, as you just saw, regularly changing their gloves and limiting who approaches the trucks. The owners say they plan to keep going until the food runs out. And I bet you the truckers really appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Compass. You can always log on to cbc.ca/PEI for more news from our province 24 hours a day. Vashi Capellos is up next with Power and Politics, and we'll see you here tomorrow. Good night, PEI.